This happens all the time. Conservative grassroots work to help a candidate overcome the odds and get elected, only to have that candidate stab them in the back. It feels inevitable, but I'm not sure it has to be. I'm Michael Quinn Sullivan with a reflection on life and liberty. So here's how we as activists tend to perceive the movement of political betrayal. The candidate wins office and soon starts getting cash from crony lobbyists. He stops showing up at conservative events. He makes excuses for bad guys, compromises with bad policy, and then takes on a voting record indistinguishable from the person he originally defeated. We get mad and demand to know how the candidate we supported became the incumbent we disliked. We like to say he sold out. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Very rarely do our politicians sell us out. Instead, we often just leave them out on the political curb to be picked up by someone else. We self-righteously say, well, they should remember who supported them in the first place. In a fit of indignation, we demand that we remember it was the conservative grassroots who brought them to the dance. And that's true. But it misses human nature writ large and our own culpability in specific. As activists, we have a tendency to chase shiny campaign objects. All too often, conservative activists will pat the newly elected politician on the head and tell him to go do good things as we move on to supporting the next person. But here's the thing about taking someone to the dance. If we don't keep dancing with them, they will start to focus on who is. If it's not the grassroots activists in their own communities, it will be the crony lobbyists at the Capitol. In our system of representative government, lawmakers will always end up representing those they hear from the most. Each of us must encourage each other to engage more effectively with the servants we hire to fill positions of power and responsibility. Quite honestly, the individual politicians themselves will matter less and less as the citizenry becomes stronger and more active. And that's how it should be. Our job as citizens is not to try to be friends with the hired help, but rather to judge their performance without regard to their motivations or intentions or even our own hopes. We can't base our effectiveness as activists on how happy politicians and their sycophantic cheerleaders are with us. We must instead view it from the lens of policy advancement and the expansion of liberty. Sure, we can clap like trained seals at the circus and be welcomed into the fold of career politicians, or we can speak honestly about their actions, movements, and records with our families and neighbors. Typically, political consultants have suggested that grassroots activists scale back when the governing begins. That serves no one but the crony elite. Both the sewer culture in the Texas legislature and the D.C. swamp seek to corrupt everyone who comes into their contact. When we send our servants alone into those environments, we can't expect them to emerge unscathed. As such, the citizenry must ramp up our engagement on the issues, on the candidates, on the lawmakers, and most of all, with each other. Our self-governing republic demands active and engaged citizenry at all times. Anyone who tells you differently is seeking to enslave you. Anyone who tells you that there was a time in which citizens didn't have to be involved is asking you to hearken back to the soft servitude of the 1750s. To save the republic, we as citizens must be committed to a life of activism. The Reflections podcast is presented by Texas Scorecard. If you like today's message, be sure to rate it, leave a review, and encourage your friends to listen. Today's edition was produced by Nick Shepard. I'm Michael Quinn Sullivan. Thanks for listening.